welcome to the podcast. This is a legal podcast with my good friend and my colleague and someone that I do cases with, Devon Workman of the Workman law firm. He's an active litigator down here in Florida. He is pushing cases to trial and holding the insurance companies accountable. And we have a few cases together right now. We're not going to be able to talk about our open cases, but we will be able to talk about some of our settled cases, what he's been working on, a little bit about what it's like to have your own firm, what it's like to transition from going from a big firm to running your own firm, being an entrepreneur, being a dad. Honestly, this one could probably go for a while, but we'll see how much we can knock out in, an hour or two. So thank you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming by today. You're not that new of a father, but somewhat of a new father. I think when we met, you had just become a dad.
Yep. My kid was less than a year old, I think, when we met.
Amazing.
Yep.
I still remember that. Time flies.
Yep.
COVID, time flies even faster, and you're going to be another dad. You're going to have another child soon.
Yeah, number 2 on the way.
Amazing. So tell me about your practice. Tell me a little bit about like where your career practice.
I'll start from kind of the beginning then. I guess it'll probably be easier.
Yeah.
Right out of law school, I started my own firm.
Oh, okay.
Which was crazy, somewhat good, but kind of stupid at the same time.
Yeah.
I think there's this misconception that you can do it right out of law school. I think you can, but I think it's not in the best interest for clients.
Sure.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's a fine line.
So it's great to get cases, but when you got them, you're like, wait, what the hell do I do here? How do I handle this?
Yeah.
So I always wanted to have my own business. Always wanted to do that. So I did that for like 8 months.
Okay.
I was just taking whatever.
Yeah.
I was like suing Capital One over travel insurance. I was just taking whatever came to the door.
Yeah. Well, there's so much to learn that
Right.
you just got so much energy.
It was a good experience though, because it also got me to do like everything.
Yes.
From sending mail to doing all this stuff. And it was just like, you don't get that experience working at other firms because you have so many other staff doing it for you.
Yeah, it's such an assembly line that they want you just doing what you do and that's it.
Right. So I did that for like 8 months, and then like a recruiter hit me up and was like, hey, you want to join a big firm and do litigation? And I was like, I think I probably should.
You realize it was probably, even though you wanted to love being on your own,
right.
It was kind of like low-hanging fruit, right?
Right.
It's like, I can do this. If I don't like it or if I learn everything that I think I need to learn in a year, I can just bounce.
Right. I'm like, what's the worst that happen? If I don't like it there, I can always just go back to have my own shop or go somewhere else. So I was like, you know what? Let me go get that experience. And then I joined one of the big PI firms here, and I litigated cases for them for like almost 4 years.
Advertising firm, right? I'm not going to use names, although if it's a big enough firm, the way I'd like to do, and I think this is reasonable, you tell me what you think as an attorney,
right?
But we don't use names on the podcast unless the entity or the name of the person that we're talking about is putting themselves out there.
Okay.
So like if someone has their own big YouTube channel, then
Right.
I have no problem talking about their name.
Right.
If they're a firm that does like a ton of advertising, I have no problem about using their name.
Gotcha.
But if it's somebody that doesn't really do anything in the public eye, then I don't really use their
Gotcha.
name.
I mean, I work for Andrew and Levine, so
Okay.
they're one of the big guys down here. And so they advertise all
Huge
the time.
advertising
Yeah.
firm.
So I worked for them, and honestly, it was the best experience. I got in there. They were like, "Here's 50 files. You have a hearing tomorrow. You have this." And I was like, "Shit, I got to figure this out," because I really still didn't know what I was doing.
What did you do with your existing cases?
So we talked. I was like, "Hey, I got these files," and pretty much the firm was like, well, most of these are dog shit.
Yeah.
We don't want them.
Yeah.
So here's 2. You can keep those.
Everything else
refer them out or discharge the client, but you're not bringing them in here. So I brought like 2 cases of my own that were in litigation already.
Okay.
Brought them in with me, and then I had assigned.
You just turned down the other ones or referred them to
I referred them
else?
out, or I tried to get them. Like I think I got some of them like resolved quickly while I was still like in the transition period.
Nice. That's what I thought you would say. I was wondering.
Yeah, I figured out. I'm like, let me try to see if I can get some of these settled. So
what year was that?
That was
roughly
2017 is when I started my practice right out of law school.
Okay.
So that was like roughly around mid 2018.
Okay. So you joined Anajar in 18.
Yeah.
They're pretty much a big player already, right? At that time?
Yeah, a bunch of files.
They've been around 10 years probably. I think maybe even longer. I mean, I think they started, I remember them, they first started advertising at the Heat Arena, like probably in like 2005 maybe. Mm-hmm. I don't know. So so you jump in, high volume, quick, a lot of files.
Yeah, a lot of lit files, and they just said, here, get to going, start taking depots, start going to hearings, started doing everything, and it was the best experience though, because I got to litigate I don't know, probably over 500 files
Yeah.
in 4 years, if not more. And just that the amount of different things that you see and experience is just unmatched. You know?
Yeah, from going from like piddly little cases to you're still working on like the smaller cases, but you have so much volume,
Right.
and now you don't have to do it like the mail. You don't have to do like, you can just focus on the client work and the case work.
Right. So
that's cool.
Did that for almost 4 years, and then this might sound cliche or whatever, but I had my son in April of 2021, and I sat there and looked at him. I was like, I got to have my own thing. I got to start my own thing. Just to have even though now realizing I have my own firm, that I probably work 10 times as much.
Yes, but you can at least dictate the terms.
Right. I can say, you know what, I can go home early this day. I can take this vacation. I can work late at night, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I can go home and put him to sleep for an hour and then stay up 4 hours after that and grind if I need to.
So I had that little, aha moment. And then 6 months later, I told the guys, hey, I'm starting my own shop, and started my own firm.
So you've been on your own for like 3 years now, about?
Not even. We just hit 2 years in January.
2 years, so it's 2 and change.
Yeah.
Amazing. And did you take cases, like did you have to make a deal? You left all your cases there?
Every single one of them.
Okay, so you just got to start from scratch.
Yeah, started with zero.
Interesting. I've been through a little bit of back and forth being on my own, having a partner, but my most recent thing was I built a big practice with my last partner, and we just kind of started seeing like the world in different ways, and so we wanted to split up, and I just same thing. I was just like, I'm going to leave all my cases here. The few cases that I was really involved in, I stayed involved in,
right.
And then all the other all the other cases I just left, and I started my own firm the next day with basically two cases. And I wasn't even really my case. I was just co-counsel with the old legacy firm,
right?
Which I think I told that story to like a lot of attorneys, and they're like, it kind of freaks them out, but for me, it was like the best feeling ever.
Right.
Like I got to be like, I hated this software that I was using, and like the idea of like migrating like your entire like book of business to a new software is like a disaster.
Right.
But when you have no cases, it's the easiest thing ever. You're like, okay, I want to use this software. I don't want to use this vendor anymore. I don't want to, like, you have all these things that you like, as you practice over 15 years, you get kind of like suckered into.
Right.
And then when you start fresh from scratch, it gives you this amazing opportunity to just be like, I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to do this bullshit anymore.
Right.
This person's fired. This vendor's off the team. This software is gone. So I looked at it as like a positive thing.
It's funny you say that, because everybody I talk to that starts their own firm, they always are like, wait, you started with no cases? Like, I had to bring this. I had to have cases just to like get myself to feel comfortable. And to be honest with me, like thinking about bringing cases while trying to transition and like get everything set up with the business side would honestly sound more stressful to me.
Yeah.
Like, oh, and I got 5 active cases, even maybe some in lit, and I got depots where I'm trying to set up this whole new.
Yeah, you're like moving your like boxes into like, and like computers, and like building a website,
right.
getting your email set up, figuring out what your CRM is going to be,
right.
Building a new Instagram. Like there's so much stuff that you have to do if you want to like run it the right way, that to be in depots you could do it.
Right.
It would just be a lot,
So I liked it. I liked starting with nothing, started from scratch, and just going and hustling and getting work.
That's amazing. So did you, I don't know how Anajar does it, but do you try your own cases, or what's the litigation system like?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I only tried 2 cases when I was there the whole time.
Okay.
And the first trial I had, I might have been a year there.
Okay.
So it was like an old case that I had inherited, and then it was, it was a case that I went there. So I did some witnesses, but they would bring in like a senior guy to come and like do the jury selection and do the opening statements and do all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I would do a witness, and it kind of got your feet wet by doing a little pieces of it, and then eventually,
and learning from the OG guy.
The path with me eventually you to go try it after you get some experience doing some other things. So the second trial I did the opening statements, and then we settled after my opening statement. So we didn't even get to a verdict on that case. So no, they usually have one of the senior guys, one of the named partners, actually come and try the cases, and you kind of do bits and pieces, but you do the whole workup for the whole case.
You kind of sit with that senior guy like the 5 days before and kind of get ready.
Right. To get everything ready, and then just help out and assist, and then do some witnesses and do some stuff to help out in trial.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So
Do you remember your first trial? Like, how nervous were you? And like,
yeah, I was so nervous, and I was so nervous at because the first trial I really just did some witnesses, so it really wasn't too stressful. I mean, because when you're doing directs, it's just like, hey, what's your name?
You didn't do jury selection.
Yeah, I didn't do jury selection. Doing that stuff. So that's not too nerve-wracking. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was still like 2 years out of school, and I was, of course, in my first time.
Yeah.
And then I did opening statements. I was definitely nervous about that one. That was the day after the Super Bowl in 2020.
Wow.
And so that one was obviously nerve-wracking. I just tried a case in Fort Pierce in last month.
Okay.
And that was really the first case that was my case.
That was your firm's first trial.
First trial, and that was the first one that I did everything. So, and I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it's been 4 years, or what is it, 2020 to 4 years since I have been in the courtroom, and that was like COVID and everything. There's not that many hearings in person and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I was expecting to be very nervous, and I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't.
It was chill.
All. It was chill, and I felt great. And I don't know if it's because it's my own shop, and I've worked the case for 2 years, and I know everything about it, and I don't know, maybe there's just that feeling too of having like a boss that oversees everything you do too, that adds that extra nerve.
Yeah, that reminds me of, I've tried a few cases in my career, not too many, but enough to have like that understanding of what it goes into it. And I remember one time having a discussion with a defense attorney, and he was just like telling me, he's like, some of you guys don't realize how nice it is, because he was like, I'm not saying that you don't prepare your cases, but you don't have anyone looking over your shoulder.
Right.
And he's like, in the defense world, you have like the name partner, you have like at least one or two adjusters, you have like regional, you have all these people like reviewing all your work and second guessing you and playing Monday morning quarterback. And I never thought about that,
right.
and I was like, that is really nice. Like if we, as plaintiffs attorneys come up with like a strategy on a Saturday night or Sunday night, right, before voir dire on Monday morning, we can just be like, let's roll with it. Like, yeah, it's risky,
Right.
say, for example, we don't want to board any medical. We don't want to show the jury any medical bills, right? Because we just think it's not a good strategy, right? Like the defense is always like, that's crazy. How could you do that? And they would never be able to get away with that, because it would be too risky.
Right.
They have to kind of play they have to play like the prevent
right.
as the defense, and they work for the insurance companies. So they're forced to play like the prevent defense, whereas we can kind of be more nimble and like do whatever we want.
Right. It's funny you said it, because my last trial, the associate and the firm was like, yeah, you got to go home now and like prepare for tomorrow. I got to go write reports to the insurance company about what happened today. Like they got to write all that stuff. We don't have to deal with that. It's nice on our end. So
yeah. I mean, it's obviously like there's a balancing. They have unlimited money. They can, and they're not incentivized to like whatever happens, it doesn't necessarily like change anything for them. Like it's not their money.
Right.
For us, it's like, we have to spend our own money. If we don't win, we don't get anything at the end. So we have so much skin in the game.
Right.
It's just really, really a different dynamic that I think both sides probably take it for granted. I had a case where the defense attorney was like telling me I was dumb. I don't know. I'm a terrible lawyer. I can't believe I brought this case, blah, blah, blah. And I was like sitting there, I'm like bashing all plaintiffs' attorneys at the same time. And I'm like, the only reason you have a job is because of plaintiffs' attorneys.
Right.
You have no career. You have nothing. You don't have a job unless we file lawsuits. And it was just so lost on him. And lo and behold, we went to court, and the judge looked at him and was like, why are we here? I didn't even have to open my mouth, but obviously he had some issues. But yeah, so there's just a very big disparity between plaintiffs' attorneys and defense attorneys. It changes, I think, a little bit when you are working on like the biggest cases, because then then you're getting to work against the named partner of the defense firm.
Right.
But even then, it's still different. They still have people looking over their shoulders and whatnot. So
yeah, it's a different level of stress, though, because they can go and they can win or lose, and they still get paid the same. We really do, like you said, we have our money on the line for our clients. We have out of our pocket. If we don't get a good recovery, our clients not only, out
pissed,
of it, they're pissed. We've lost a bunch of money because it's not cheap to go to trial out of our own pocket.
Yeah, we have to shut down our whole firm
right.
for that time.
So I think some clients don't. I think a lot appreciate it, but I think a lot don't understand it either. Where it's like, oh, why can't we just go push this thing to trial? It's like, well, do you understand that this is a costly endeavor to do that? It's easy for you on the back end to say that, and there's a risk for all of us here, So I think sometimes the clients don't fully grasp that concept of it,
I think that's a really important topic, and I think that's one of the reasons I like having my own firm, and you probably will relate to this, is that when you have a case or when you have a client that they might not be a bad person, but they're a difficult person. Mm-hmm. If you have the ability to call them in, sit with them for an hour, explain to them how things work for maybe the third or the fourth time, remind them about the numbers, show them everything, they're much more likely to kind of roll with you and be like, look, I know we need to settle this case because, I'm only getting 20 or 30 grand, but if we go to trial, there's like a small chance I might get 100, and there's like a very big chance I'm getting nothing.
Right.
And it's very hard to do that over the phone or over Zoom. And if you have 1,000 cases and you work at a huge advertising firm, there's a lot of pressure for you to like work on all the other cases that you have.
Right.
And I feel like you don't get the ability to do that hour-long sit down and really like prepare someone for, look, this is a path here and a path here. And I know this path is painful and you have to feel the pain right now. But if we go this path, we don't feel any pain right now, but we're going to feel max pain later.
Right.
And the clients don't want to hear that, but that's one of the hardest parts about the job is telling them that when it comes.
Right. I think that just builds trust over time though, right? I mean, because I know like your practice, you have those conversations with your client early on in cases, not just about like the risk, but like just having a conversation all the time on the phone with them, right? About the case, about this. And I think sometimes I hear people say, oh, I don't have client control or I can't get them to agree. That well, a lot of that problem is, in my opinion, is because you haven't been speaking to them throughout the case.
Correct.
So they don't trust you. Now all of a sudden is the first time you're calling them is to say, hey, we should do this. And they're like, wait, you haven't talked to me this whole time and now you want me just to take the settlement?
You're not even gonna do me the courtesy of giving me 20 minutes to kind of like bring me up to speed on what's been going on.
So I think it's just that trust thing where it's like, no, listen, Devon's been talking to me for the last 6 months about my case, about this and that, and now he's calling me and talking to me about this. I trust him, right?
Yeah.
Because he's been there for me the whole time.
The goodwill is there.
Right.
So they know that you're looking out for them.
Right.
So tell me about the like the practice now. Like what kind of cases are you specializing in, and what's your team look like and your approach to everything?
Yeah, I mean, so we have right now I got 5 staff.
Okay.
I had an associate. I don't have one right now. I'm looking to hire one.
Okay.
We just take, personal injury cases. I mean, I take a little bit of everything though, on everything in the personal injury realm.
Okay.
So a lot of people, stay in the lane with like a car accident case.
Yeah.
Or I do a lot of premises cases.
Okay.
And not just slip and falls, but also like just odd premises cases where just weird shit may happen.
Okay, that's interesting.
That a lot of people don't want to touch because it's just kind of out of the box. But those cases to me are kind of they're fun. You got to.
You get to be a lawyer, right?
But you got to litigate them. I mean, they don't. It's rare those kind of weird, kind of off type of personal injury cases ever get done pre-suit, right? It's just because it's too hard for the insurance company to even grasp their head around, like, what's my liability here? What's my responsibility? And it's not just me explaining it to them. And so I started taking depositions of corporate reps and this, and now they see, oh, okay, this is why this happened.
Right.
So those cases are fun to me. And honestly, the premises cases I like too, because you know how it is in Florida. The insurance out here is shit with most cars. How many car accident cases you get where there's no bodily injury coverage, no UM?
Well, that's another topic I was going to ask you is what have you seen lately? Because I've really started to see it now in the last 6 months where it feels like there's no coverage anymore. Because I've been always an auto-only guy.
Insurance rates have gone through the roof.
Yeah.
And after they passed a new bill in March of last year, the whole sell point was that premiums going to go down. Well, the insurance got their cake, and they're going to eat it too. They got laws that benefit them, and now they're jacking everybody's insurance rates through the roof.
Makes a lot of sense.
So, I've seen the same thing. I've seen where just, 1020s are just so common. I mean, they've always kind of been common, but it's even more now.
Now it just feels like almost every single case is either 0 or 10,000 of coverage.
And what's so messed up to me, and I'm kind of getting on a tangent here about this, but like the fact that too that irks me the most is that all my clients who get rear-ended and they open up a claim either on property damage or a PIP claim, next thing you know, their insurance are getting jacked up.
Yep.
And what's irritating me is we got to find a way, I think. There's a Florida statute right on point that says they can't raise your premiums if you use due to somebody else's fault, right?
Yeah.
but the insurance get away with it because they mask it. Of course, they don't say it's because of this.
They'll never tell you.
Right.
People are like, how do I know? I'm like, the truth is that anybody tells you that they know what's going to happen is lying to you.
Right.
If you asked anybody at the insurance company, they'll never tell you yes or no, because they'll be like, well, we use a complicated algorithm to determine the rates and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure it's complicated. And one of the factors is how many claims have you done?
Right.
You know, it doesn't matter. They just see
up.
you as a person who uses they want you to have insurance and never use it. Shocking.
And I feel like that's deterring a lot of people from bringing their own claims, because they're like, well, I don't want to go through PIP, or I don't want to even do this because I don't want my premiums to go higher.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, what are we paying for monthly premiums for if something happens you don't use it?
Yeah, it's a joke.
It's crazy.
We're just basically being held hostage by the insurance company.
Right.
And politics and lobbying.
So it's frustrating.
Yeah, so that is a good way to, if you have a case against a business, for the most part, you don't have to worry about the insurance.
No.
At least you know that if there's a case legally, then there's a case financially.
Right.
I think that's something that a lot of clients don't understand is you could have a case legally. Like if somebody rear ends you, for example, you have a great legal case, but you don't have a great practical case because the person who rear ended you is driving an 82 Civic and they have no insurance, or they have full coverage, which basically means no coverage under Florida law. And you have a great legal case, but you have a terrible financial practical case, which sucks, but that's the reality of the situation. So when you were talking about your like cases, premises case, meaning like case against a business where something bad happened on the business.
Correct.
What is there like a really interesting or novel case that happened recently? Because when you started talking about it, it sounded like one.
I'm trying to think. I have a lot of these. And
Where something I mean the reason I bring it up is because I want people to be able to make content from it, and people realize, oh, that's happened to me and I didn't know. I never realized that that could have been a case, like something sticking out from the floor, or obviously like slip and falls where someone spills milk in a Winn-Dixie and it's been there for 15 minutes and 6 employees have walked by it and not cleaned it up. That's a great case, but people don't understand what makes a good case or a bad case, and sometimes talking about the interesting ones are. I'm
trying to think about cases that are like, I'm thinking about open cases because those ones I'm actively litigating.
Yeah, the ones the open cases are always going to be the ones that what the best because you've been working on them, every single day.
I'm trying to think, I mean, these are obviously negligent security cases, but I like those cases as well. Like I had a client that was stabbed in a restaurant, and stuff like that, where even on the face you're like, wait, what is the business supposed to do? But you end up finding out in litigation there was a million things they could have done.
Yeah,
and there
or
was,
they really were doing,
And there was you get in litigation, you find out that they've had, every other weekend there was a fight or a bar or stabbing in there, and they didn't do anything to add security or anything like that. Cases like that where it's like, well, yeah, you should have known. You guys had a problem. You guys didn't do anything about it. Now my clients got stabbed too.
Injured.
So, stuff like that. I'm trying to think of other ones. I mean, what I like to, these ones I like are great on the big box stores is when things fall. Obviously, I don't like them for my clients, but they're great cases on liability side because
I've had a bunch of those leads over the years.
Yeah, like boxes fall on my client's head, or you're at one of these stores and frames fall and stuff like that. Those are great too because the slip and fall cases you got to prove if they knew or should have known about it. And 9 times of these cases, they caused the problem. They one of their employees put it there incorrectly.
Yeah,
which it didn't just happen.
And there's almost always footage too, right?
Yeah,
especially if it's reported.
Yeah, at one of the big box stores, they're always recorded. They're always stuff like that. The problem is, a lot of times they'll say like, "Oh, well, how do we know?" Well, when I start taking the deposition of the employees, and they're like, "Yeah, well, I did. I boxed that thing 2 days before, and oh yeah, I didn't. I kind of hung it off the side." So you get past that whole issue on Florida with the whole should they have known? Well, you created the problem.
Yeah.
So those ones are always
exclusive control over it.
Right.
It didn't just fall because of bad luck.
Right. It didn't just fall to the sky. Yeah,
it didn't just fall. Like we have footage of it. Like if you had placed it properly, it wouldn't have ever fallen.
Yeah, and those things mess up people. And those companies put some big heavy stuff on top on very high things with those clients walking by and they fall and hit my old lady in the head.
Yeah.
From far. So those kind of cases are fun to me. And again, it's surprising to me that so many of those end up in litigation. That the carriers still say, "Oh, we don't take responsibility. You can't prove that." I can't prove. Okay, we'll see when I get into litigation.
I think that's just a classic example of them. Like it comes because you play poker, I play poker. Mm-hmm. Like I think it's a classic example of like they want to force you to call their bluff.
Right.
Like, it's like, well, it's in their best interest to just deny all the claims, basically, and be like, if it's a really good case, the guy will sue us.
Right.
And if it's a bad case, then they'll just give up and then we won't have to pay. So they kind of use that as like, in any given case, it might not make sense. But when you magnify it times the 10,000 cases that they get every year, then it makes sense, because if they get 10,000 cases a year and 8,000 of the attorneys realize the case sucks and only 2,000 move forward, then they are better off by not paying the cases out early.
It's funny you say that, because there's so many cases I've got because these big box stores send the boilerplate denial as soon as they get a letter of rep, right? And a lot of, not a lot, but there's some personal injury lawyers who just get that denial and say, oh, well, I don't have either video, I don't have this, I don't know if it's worth litigating, right?
Yeah.
So they just drop it.
Yeah.
Right? And then
the case goes away, and then another attorney is much less likely to take it because the first guy dropped it,
right? Which
sucks, but I mean, most of the time that's there's it's like, oh, well, there's probably something wrong with the file.
Right. So then I when I get those denials, I just immediately file on them. Immediately. I just immediately put them in sue. And it's so funny what happens as soon as I serve them. I would say probably 8 times out of 10, a new adjuster gets reassigned and says, hey, we didn't get a demand. I'm like, of course you didn't. You denied the claim. You want a demand? You want to talk about it now? And then they say, yeah, send me something, see what we can do. And,
Interesting.
So it's just funny how that works. And I think it goes to what your point is that let's send out a bunch of these denials and let's see who's actually going to file on them. And if they don't, they go away.
Yeah, how amazing is that? If they can just send a denial letter, let's say an adjuster has 100 open cases. If he just sends 100 denials, he might get 60 out of 100 just dropped by sending a single letter.
Right.
That's amazing strategy for them financially.
Yeah.
And there's no law that says they can't do it. So they could, they have the money. Again, going back to that, they have the money. So it's good strategy for them. I have a case that we can maybe talk about a teeny bit on the air, but obviously we just have to be vague. Have you done a lot of? I have a case against Home Depot, so I've been wanting to talk to you about that. Have you had a lot of cases against Home Depot?
I've had a good amount.
Okay. Now what they're trying to do, they didn't deny the claim, but they lowballed. So we client has had significant treatment, even had a laser rhizotomy on his back. Sounds like a pretty clear case of liability, and they just offer 10,000, and then they offer to do mediation, which I've always seen that earlier when I was a younger attorney, I would get excited about that because which I think is their strategy. They want you to be like, oh, mediation, it's going to be as if it was getting close to trial. We're going to get real money on the file. And what they want you to do is get your hopes up, you have to explain to the client that you're going to go to mediation, and then they barely have they bring almost no authority,
right? And
they just try and settle as many pre-suit cases as possible for chump change,
right?
Have you done those before, and is that your experience?
So when I get those either pre-suit or even in litigation, early mediation, what I do is I will say, you put this much money on the table, and we'll go to mediation.
Yeah.
And 10 out of 10 times, it never happens.
Never happens, right?
So I said, I'm not going there.
Yeah. It's funny that, so you realize, we know we're smart guys. We've actually litigated and tried cases. That just happened. And what I did was, I didn't do that specifically, but what I said is, but I always do this. I'm like, if you want me to go to mediation, I know that your mediation, it's on your terms. You're going to try and settle the case on the cheap. That's fine. Whatever. I understand that. That's your strategy. Fine. But let me see what I can get out of you. Like you said, if you want me to go to mediation, make an offer of $100K. I think the case is worth $400, but make me an offer of $100, and at least I know I'm not wasting my time.
Right.
Thank you. That doesn't work. Sometimes it does, but usually it doesn't. What I did was, okay, if you want me to go to mediation, send me the footage. So I tried that. Actually, this morning I got an email response saying, I kind of want to read the response to you, but basically the lady's like, I'm not the attorney, but here's the attorney that's handling the claim, but I can also tell you that we can't release the footage because the codec that's required to view the footage cannot be sent outside the firm. And I'm just like, what kind of bullshit is that? When you're in litigation, you have to turn it over.
Right.
You have a department that can put it onto a format that you can turn over to the other attorney.
Right.
But I just thought it was interesting. They even had a canned line for, I could promise you that we have it, but so.
Well, that's even what about the video pre-suit is there's so many, these again, big box stores will say, deny the claim. And I'm like, all right, let me see the video then. What you're talking about. We were talking about a video that you're looking at. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right, yeah.
And most of them won't send it. Well,
right.
I can't policy. Well, then, all right, then I'm going to file suit. And I'm going to see it. Like we could easily, if it's so good for you, then just show it to me.
I always find that the most interesting. Like if I'm talking to an adjuster at the insurance company and they're like, yeah, policy is we can't give it to you. And I'm like, let me tell you something. The last time I had a case against you guys, there was a video and it was really good for you guys. And they showed it to me like within 5 minutes of me sending my first letter. Right. And then I dropped the case. So I know you can, and you're just not doing it because you don't want, when I see that video, I'm going to want to file suit. So that's a hard one for them to do. Right. And I don't mind it when they don't give it because it just means that it's probably helpful.
Yeah, it's good for us then.
And eventually we know that we're going to get it.
Right.
We just need a court order.
Right.
So is that like one of the big topics that comes up? Like, do you get that early? Or I remember I don't do slip and fall litigation now like I used to, but I remember the hot topic was when I was doing it is you file your lawsuit, you ask for the footage, and then they say, well, we get to depose your client, and then right after we depose you, we'll give you the footage.
Yeah.
So what's the latest on that now?
I fight that every day.
Okay.
And so it's the judge's discretion. So it depends on what judge it is.
So it's discretionary.
Discretionary,
these days.
yeah. So the judge, every judge usually has so if it's a judge that I know how he rules, I won't even fight it then because I'll be like, I know I have 4 orders that he says it goes after plaintiff's depot, so I'm not wasting my time. Let's get it done and we'll get it.
Okay.
And then and I think defense knows now. These firms know enough too. Well, I'll have cases where they're like, oh, it's in front of this judge. I'm going to give you the video because I know he's going to rule. So most judges,
some of the attorneys still probably litigate just for the sake.
Oh, it's still make their billable hours. So it's still going to go fight it, and I'll be like, sometimes I'll even say like, hey, here's 5 orders from this judge that gets produced now, and they like
policy, right? Still want policy. No, I can't release it. I need an order.
Still need an order. I'm like, all right, fine. We go waste our time doing that.
Yeah, but whatever.
Yeah.
At least it's on Zoom now, right?
Right. So it's easy. The only downside is it just the courts are definitely with the mass filing and everything. It's hard to get hearing times. So now my case is postponed for 4 months because we got to go get this order to get the video because of course I'm not letting my client get deposed without it if I know I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
So now the case is just sitting, waiting for this one, hearing. That's what's frustrating on my end.
Are you litigating in all 3 counties or most of it in Broward?
I'm litigating everywhere.
Okay.
I got a case in Monroe County all the way up in Flagler County. I got cases all across the state. So it's good, but nowadays now with the depots, if there's some, asshole defense attorneys who want to do it in person, these depots. Yeah. It's rare, but I can't win that hearing anymore. Back in the day, you could say, "Oh, well, it needs to be done by Zoom because of COVID." Now if they really want it in person, it's going in person. So that's the only downside of litigating all these counties. But I make it work.
What percent of the time does that actually happen?
Very 10%,
rare. Not even.
Not even 5%. Like I think in 2 weeks, I got a depot in Orlando that I got to go to.
They have to go in person.
Yes, it's my client's depot in person, so it's rare.
Is it usually with the plaintiff's depots, or is it with all? Or is that the only one that they try and do?
Yeah, I mean, because if my depots that I want to take, I'm like, listen, if you guys want to do it, go to somewhere in person. That's all by all means. It's my depot. I'm taking on Zoom.
Right.
So yeah, it's usually the plaintiff's depot. Which I mean, don't be wrong. If I was a defense lawyer, I would probably want to do it. Make it a pain for them. Make them show up.
Especially if it's in your backyard.
Right.
So it costs you basically nothing.
Exactly. So I would, if I was them, I think I would do the same thing.
I would probably do the same thing too.
Yeah.
You can also get under people's skin a little bit easier in person. Yep. You can see more, human reactions. You can get a better read on them, like from the poker perspective. Right. Like, oh, I think this guy's lying. Like, it's a little bit easier to not coach your witnesses via Zoom, but you can always take breaks easier and just call them and reframe the situation for them and kind of help them stay calmer. You know what I mean?
Right. What I've realized too with mediations now on Zoom is that I feel like mediations back when it was in person, they would purposely just drag it out for so long, right?
Yeah.
And they would do that because you're sitting there and your clients are like, we're 5 hours and they're still like, let's just get this done. I'll take
It's like
whatever.
a war of attrition. Yeah.
Right. Now, mediations are so much quicker because they're like, I'm like, we can sit here all day. My client's hanging on the couch watching TV, you know, like they're watching Netflix right now. We can sit here all day. They don't care.
Yeah.
So I feel like they don't, that whole tactic, and I honestly love it because mediations aren't just dragged out. Now we get into the chase. Like now all right, are we getting this thing done? We're going back and forth quicker.
It does make it a lot nicer because, man, that was so painful.
It's terrible.
7-hour mediation on like a small case where like you're like haggling over 10 grand extra,
right? And
they're gonna keep you there until midnight is, I mean, pure torture.
And they get a bill for it. So for them, they have every incentive to like just drag it along, you know. So that's honestly the mediations via Zoom now are the best thing that's happened.
Yeah, that's a huge plus. I mean, also motion calendar via Zoom is a huge bonus too, because doing motion calendar hearings, like driving to court for that was crazy.
Right. The only downside I think with the motion calendar on Zoom is that people are willing to push more stupid issues because it's how easy it is to do it.
Because the downside is much more limited.
Right. All I get is just show up on my phone or whatever and go argue some stupid motion that before we would never go argue because we both wouldn't want to go drive and sit in traffic and go do this. And it's a hearing that we should have worked out. This issue should have worked out.
But you still run the risk of making yourself look bad in front of the judge when you force some stupid hearing to go forward.
Yeah.
But a lot of attorneys aren't, especially the defense attorneys, are not thinking that far advance.
Right.
So they're just like, I want to make this as hard as possible for them.
Right. And so, I mean, now with defense firms, I mean, they're so busy now with the mass filing. I mean, those guys are slammed. I mean, it's crazy to try to get anything out of them now, like depot dates and get this and that. They're just so behind.
When the what are you referring to when you say the mass filings?
Well, like, you know, when the new law changed in March, and a lot of the firms I did file to preserve the old law.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what you're referring to.
Yeah. So
like a lot of firms filed like 80% of their entire case list in a week.
Right. So I mean, that was a craziness. You know, my firm did it, and it was just so. Now the problem is a lot of those cases luckily got resolved.
Yeah.
But then a lot of those cases, we end up, you know, coming to the 120 days where we actually had to serve the lawsuits. And like my incidents, some of my incidents happened 3 days before the new law. So my clients are still treating. So it's there were some judges that were saying that the mass filing strategy wasn't effective, right? What's the latest on that? I think the orders that are coming out, I think it's rare. I think there's might be 1 or 2 judges out there that have applied the new law retroactively.
Okay.
But majority of the judges are saying it's clear by the, you know.
Okay, so enough rulings have had now where it's the vast majority going back to the way it should have been.
Correct. So but these firms are still filing, you know, on my case that I did file, you know, trying to apply the new law, and I'm like, guys. So you
still have to have hearings on those often?
I got to file a motion to strike it and have hearings on it. And
what's the most common thing that comes up that you need to force the old law to be applied?
It's just everything on the comparative, right? The 51%, especially in the slip and fall cases, because they want to try to say that your client's more than 51% liable because
they just want it to be. They're setting hearings. Are they setting hearings specifically just like hearing to determine which law applies? Is that happening, or are they having to come up with a manufacturer like a specific reason, and then that issue becomes up?
So what happens is they'll file their affirmative defenses right to the complaint,
right? And
those affirmative defenses, they'll put the House bill, whatever.
Yeah, they'll refer to the new law.
They'll refer and say that, you know, it's barred by recovery because it's, you know, your client's more than 51%. All the medical bills should be it should be evaluated based upon what health insurance and Medicare and Medicaid fee schedule and all this stuff.
And then you move to strike.
And I move to strike, and then we go in front of the judge, and, you know. So
you get it resolved. That's the first hearing of the case.
First hearing of the case, and we get nip that in the butt and say this was filed before the enactment, therefore it doesn't apply retroactively, and, you know, we'll go from there. And my hearings so far have been straightforward. Judges say yes, correct.
Are most of the answers that are being filed now we're in post law, so you can't fight it. So this issue's resolved now. There's not. Yeah. This is old now.
This is just for stuff that was filed before, and even like cases that are, you know. And now there's some cases like the case I went to trial on. They filed a motion in limine trying to apply it on certain bills and stuff like that, which luckily the judge before trial said no, it doesn't apply retroactively. So some of the old cases they're still trying to get it in on different aspects of the case, not just in the affirmative defenses.
Interesting.
So, but all the things that are filed after March, I mean, That's all under the new law, and I'm still intrigued to see how it's going to play out with regard to the medical bills. I think it's still up in the air how that's actually going to play out. I had an adjuster the other day for travelers tell me, she's like, well, did she submit the bills to her health insurance? I said, no. She's like, well, what would health insurance pay on those bills? I said, I don't know, because we didn't submit the bills.
Yeah.
She's like, all right, well, we're going to go find out. I said, how are you going to find out? We're going to go call her health insurance and say, if she would have submitted this bill, what would you paid? Yeah. And she's like, couldn't give me an answer. I'm like, because of course, you think they're going to cooperate with you and like tell you?
Even if you depose them, they're still not going to give you a clean answer. They're going to be like, hypothetical, I don't know.
Right. It makes no sense. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know how practically it's ever going to apply to find out what somebody's specific plan would have paid on hypothetical bills that were never submitted.
That's a good point. Because that's what the law says has to happen, but it's impossible.
How would you ever know that?
Yeah.
And I guess they're trying to say, well, it's your burden to prove that, plaintiff. Like, well, my burden is I have my medical bills that are owed and outstanding, and the doctors are going to come testify that this is their bill that's owed and outstanding, and we didn't submit it to health insurance because it's under a letter of protection. Yeah. And then I guess it's on you to come and try to tell us what health insurance would have paid and what would have been,
Yeah, that's weird. Messy. I mean, the people who wrote the law don't really have any care or incentive to see that it's going to be a law that can be applied practically.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Or the worst part is if your client doesn't have health insurance, right? Yeah. Now they say, well, the bill is going to apply to what Medicaid would have paid. Yeah. Well, the client doesn't have Medicaid. He has no health insurance. Yeah. So, like, have fun going to tell HCA Aventura that their $20,000 bill for the client who had no health insurance is only responsible for what Medicaid paid. HCA Aventura would have been kick rocks. He doesn't have Medicaid. We didn't get paid. Our bill is owed in full. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's going to be unconstitutional for sure, right?
It doesn't make sense. Yeah. So I'm just hoping somebody bigger than me goes and fight these issues and gets it determined, because I think it's still very up in the air.
I think a really good strategy is to not even bring the bills into the courtroom.
I think that's
have you been in that situation before?
I've never done it. I've listened to a lot of podcasts with other and spoke to other lawyers as well, especially in other states. Yep. And they've done like kind of like a case study, submitting bills at trial versus not submitting bills. Oh, that's
cool. I haven't heard about that. And like a A/B test, kind of.
And they've determined that when they don't submit bills, their verdicts are like 150% bigger than when they submit the bills.
Interesting.
And if you think about it, it makes sense though, right? Because one, your trial isn't bogged down by what's reasonable, what's charged.
It's such a ticky-tack issue
right.
Anyway, yeah.
Now the jury just is addressing what were the harms done to this person and how has it affected them? Right. How has it affected them in the past, in the future, right? And you can actually, and now you're not just fighting about bills, because then what happens just naturally, I think too, and what they talk about is that jurors correlate pain and suffering with what the bills were.
Yes, that's what I always thought. It was like, if you have a situation where you're going to be like looking at $10,000 and $20,000 amounts or $30,000 amounts, then the jury is going to be like, all right, we're thinking like in like $10,000 increments, right? And you're talking about like a spine surgery with like maybe like a second spine surgery, and like you want the jury to be thinking in terms of like hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions. Mm-hmm. So it's worth the risk to not even show them the bills, because they're obviously going to assume that there's bills, right? But it's better to just not even. Right. And I love the defense. Every time you bring that up, the defense thinks like, I don't know if it's deep down they know that it's like a good strategy, or if they legitimately think you're just crazy. Mm-hmm. But every time you like tell them you're not even going to bring any bills to trial, they gasp and they tell you you're being crazy.
Right. I think the hard part though with Florida though is, I think, because a lot of these other states I've heard people talk about this, is that they don't have that threshold on permanency. Yeah. And I think that's what scares a lot of personal injury lawyers in Florida, is because you know how hard permanency is. I mean, they're going to hire their CME doctor who's going to say your client doesn't have permanency in every case, and then try to convincing a jury that this person has a permanent injury is just always so tough, And so if you don't get permanency, then you don't get pain and suffering. And then if you waive your medical bills, then you don't get medical bills either.
You're zipped.
So I think that's the hard part, because these other states don't have that threshold. So if you take away medical bills, you still can get pain and suffering, right? Like Georgia, Texas, these places like that. So I think that's what gets a lot of Florida personal injury lawyers for not doing that.
It pushes them over the edge to not take that risk.
Right, because at least if we don't get permanency, at least if they find that the accident caused the injury, then at least we get our meds.
Well, not necessarily. You at least get to talk about them. What if the jury doesn't give them to you?
Right, exactly. If the jury says that they're unreasonable, or we think these are inflated, or whatever the case may be, then you're right. Then you get whatever they give you.
Right. which they don't necessarily just give you your meds, because the defense is going to spend so much time talking about how a lot of the doctors just pull numbers out of a hat,
Right.
and there's not much you can do to counteract that, because it is kind of true. I mean, they have their like reasoning for why, but every doctor charges a different amount or whatever, so the juries can just arbitrarily just give you whatever they want.
Yeah. So see, it's tough. I mean, people don't realize it's Florida. It's tough.
Florida laws are not very optimal.
Definitely, for that, and that's what I like about going back to my premises stuff. In premises case, you don't have the primacy threshold. You don't have that.
Yeah.
Your injury, you get your past meds, you find negligence, and you find that the injuries were caused by this incident. You get your past meds, you can get futures if there is some that's available, that's been testified to, and you don't have to show permanency to get pain and suffering. So even somebody who has just a chiro, neck and back, and MRI, well, what's the pain and suffering for going through that? And I don't have to show permanency on
Yeah, you don't have some arbitrary like word that you have to like have a whole battle over with your expert and their expert, and then the jury's distracted by like this word, you know, that they feel like it has to be permanent, you know.
And when you just hear that word, it just sounds so much worse than what the law actually says it is.
Yeah.
Right? It just that word, you think about permanent disability and you think about just the worst thing possible.
Yeah.
That's just how
like someone in a wheelchair for life.
That's how normal people think, and it's hard to teach them that it's not that standard, you know. I think just normal people.
A lot of people's minds don't get changed. Like they have their preconception, and then that is what it is.
Right. It's tough.
Unless there's someone, like if you have someone in the jury who believes X, and then you have someone in the jury who believes Y, they're going to have to butt heads. And then whoever cares more about it usually just wins, because at the end of the day, they're just like, I've interviewed jury people after trials, and they're like, yeah, like I wanted to give you a lot of money, but this other guy was on the jury and he like hated your client, and like, I just gave in because he cared a lot more than I did.
Right.
You know, which is like sad, but
it's the reality.
It's just the way it works.
Yeah.
So the premises cases is that your bread and butter right now?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I mean, of course I got my car accident cases.
Yeah.
I just personally like those because I'm not fighting about these issues.
And you just file those right away?
If there's denials and stuff like that, for sure.
Do you give them a chance to like make an offer?
Yeah. So I mean, it depends on the case.
Yeah.
You know, if it's a really bad injury case, I know I got to litigate it.
You'll just tell the client, look, we're going to waste time. It's better strategy. Just set the tone right away, and go right to court.
Because if it's a big in my experience, a big damage premises case, they're going to need to do a bunch of litigation to determine the value and determine whether or not they want to pay on the claim. If it's a smaller claim, those ones can get probably done pretty early on,
depending on decent liability.
Yeah, decent liability, even on questionable liability. Again, because for them, at the end of the day, there's still a cost of defense.
Yeah.
Right. And so
for sure. It's not like the auto ones where they have their own in-house, where they just throw another case on the file.
Right. And they're fighting you over a 25-50 for 2 years, you know?
Yeah. They have incentive to fight you because they have so many cases, and they've already paid the salaries of their in-house attorneys.
Yeah.
None of the premises firms have their own attorneys, right?
No, I mean, Publix has like staff counsel in-house now.
Do they?
It's there. You see them every once in a while on cases.
Okay.
I haven't had one on them in a while, but I've had cases against like Publix staff counsel.
So they have attorneys that only defend Publix.
Yeah, that's it.
And
they're like, they work for Publix. So
just like Geico has their own staff counsel.
Correct. So they're I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. I think that's it. That's
I was assuming the answer would be no, but if anybody, it would be Publix, just because I don't know how many locations they have in Florida, and they have for every location there's probably 100 claims a year minimum. Yeah. So it's probably 100,000 claims a year. It's pretty crazy.
Right. So that makes sense for them.
And they probably still send the majority of the claims to private counsel.
Oh yeah.
But anything probably under 50K exposure, they just handle in-house and try and just minimize.
Right.
Have they been? Do you remember dealing with Publix on the small claims? Were they easy to deal with? Like, do they get?
They fight.
Still kind of annoying. They have a lot of incentive to fight.
Yeah.
Because even if the case is worth between 10 and 50K, times it by 1,000 or 25,000 claims, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So tell me about, you just tried a case?
Yeah, I tried it in Fort Pierce.
How did it go?
It was a tough case.
Yeah, premises case?
No, it was an auto.
Okay.
It was an auto case. It was a dispute on liability auto case. Progressive was the carrier for the at-fault. They pulled it from staff. They brought outside counsel in.
Okay.
Tried a case against probably one of the best defense attorneys in the state.
Yep.
Great guy and good a lawyer. Just a tough case all around. I mean, it wasn't huge PD.
Yeah, they love those.
It was a husband and wife. So so essentially, it was trying 2 cases in one, which is if you go try a case, it's hard. That's a hard thing to do. I think.
Yeah.
To try to.
My first trial was a husband and wife together.
Yeah.
But it was only a spousal claim. It wasn't 2 actual injury claims.
Yeah. So it was 2 injury claims.
Okay. Yours was. Okay.
Yeah. So those are tough, and so the wife had a lot of priors.
Okay.
And it was a tough case. I mean, we settled on day 3.
Okay.
During trial.
Okay. So you settled mid-trial.
Mid-trial,
Okay.
Which was honestly a good thing because I spoke to there was 4 jurors outside the courtroom after we settled, and I was like, I want to go speak to them and see what they thought.
Yeah, it's the best ever for
so
learning.
We talked for like
whatnot.
2 hours with the jurors.
Wow.
And they were really open, like about everything.
Just you and the jurors, no one else.
Me and the jurors. I had my buddy who came and like sat with me during the trial and kind of helped out. because you got to have second eyes.
Yeah, because you didn't have associate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then defense counsel came over eventually too. We were talking with them.
Oh,
as
that's
well.
cool.
So I think they were going to fine. They said they were going to fine for us on liability wise.
Okay.
Which I was like, all right, cool. But they were like,
we weren't going to give you much.
They were like, we weren't going to give you much, if anything, on the injury side. We just really didn't believe the clients. So I was like, I made the right assessment then to get the case resolved because I had a gut feeling that was going on.
It was day 3, but at what point was it middle of defense case?
No, it was still in my case.
Okay, so you were still on the plaintiff's side.
Yeah, we had presented. We had an accident reconstructionist.
Okay.
So he testified. I actually called the defendant first in my case in chief.
Okay.
Which I thought was good strategy. I think just to kind of get that, I thought just nip liability in the butt by getting him on the stand.
Yeah.
And then my client went. We played some doctor depots.
Okay.
That we had in the can.
Okay.
And then then the wife did her direct, and then we settled on lunch break during she was getting crossed. We had a lunch break during lunch. That's when
for the husband?
For the wife.
Oh, okay.
And we at that point, I was like, I think we should probably have a conversation about getting this thing resolved.
Was the wife's? She was about to get crossed, or she was?
It was still in the middle of her cross. She had been getting crossed for about 2 hours.
And was that going bad?
It wasn't going well.
See, that's really funny. That's my first trial was actually going very well until the wife got crossed. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was able to interview the jurors from my trial as well, and they told me, you were going to get paid. Like you were doing great. And then when the wife got her cross-examination, she had such an attitude that like half the jury just like wanted to give you guys nothing. So you went from having like a really good possible like verdict to getting like a pretty crappy verdict.
Right.
And it's just a lot of similarities between what you were describing.
Yeah.
And I had no clue. I didn't know at all. In hindsight, when they told me that, I was like, you're like, wow, I can't believe that. She wasn't even in the car. Like, it wasn't even about her case or her at all. But because it was, she was the wife and she talked about her daughter was in the car and her daughter had an injury claim. But the husband was the one who was the main case. I settled the daughter's claim before trial, so the trial was only about the husband's injury claim, and I guess they just like you've done mock trials, right?
Right.
And whatchamacallit, focus groups. You learn a lot. Like sometimes the stuff that you would never in a million years think mattered. Like the whole case is all about like the wife who's not even injured, her bad attitude, right? Like, geez, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's funny because when I talked to some of the jurors after ours, they like brought up things of like, yeah, this testimony got me swayed a little bit. And I was like, that testimony.
You never would have thought it, right?
Didn't even realize that testimony was even a big deal, like in that situation. But to them, it was like that was like a big deal. To this, that was a big deal. And it's like you said, we get so caught up in the case and how we think about it that sometimes you got to speak. And I do this. I needed to start doing more focus groups.
Yeah.
Definitely on my cases that I'm gonna go try or my bigger cases. But I call family or friends, and I just give hypothetical situations. And what do you think about this fact? What do you think about this fact? And I hear their thoughts. And when I'm doing my prep for trial, just because I got to get out of my own head of what I think is important, And so if you call, family members or close friends, and they tell you, oh, well, this didn't make sense or that didn't make sense. For me, it helps me out to prepare.
It's really true. Even you could be the best lawyer in the world, but still, because of the seat that you're sitting in, you will not be able to see the world through the eyes of a juror. It's just, it's impossible. And probably the better lawyer you are, the harder it is to see the world through the eyes of a jury. So you need to rely on other people's opinions and things like focus groups. Right. So you did tell me that you just got one resolved for $1 million. Is that under confidentiality or
no?
Talk
it wasn't.
about it?
No, we can talk about it.
Yeah, tell me what happened in that one.
Yeah, it was a negligent security case. I had a young client that was stabbed in the parking lot of an apartment complex.
Okay.
And it was just a really random act.
Okay.
There was a fight in the parking lot, big crowd of people, and out of nowhere she got stabbed and had to have a major surgery.
Oh wow.
To her stomach, was in like an ICU for like 5 days.
Okay.
Luckily, she healed like physically wise, but she had a really bad scar.
Okay.
Medical bills were taken care of by health insurance, but obviously a lot of mental anguish. You can imagine. Doubt. I mean, you got stabbed. So we put the case in litigation, and we litigated the case for a year and a half. Took a bunch of depositions. I had an expert, security expert, and essentially this apartment complex was just riddled with prior crimes. Prior incidents, which obviously in those negligent security cases
matters.
It goes to foreseeability.
Yeah.
Right. And they destroyed evidence too, which was good. I got some good orders on spoliation that they had destroyed video evidence and stuff like that, which never is a good look if you're trying to defend a case.
So you got the negative inference.
Yeah.
Okay.
So got some orders on that, and then we were set for trial. So we had a calendar call coming up like a week before trial, and they settled the case. They finally got to the $1 million, and we got it done. We were far apart for a long time, but
I'm sure they love to be nice and low and far apart until, I always tell this to clients, like, well, can't we just go to court? I'm like, yes, we can, but there's about 1,000 steps between now and getting a verdict.
Right.
And the verdict is the only thing that makes the insurance company pay. And they don't even pull out their checkbook generally until we've at least cut the amount of steps from 1,000 to like 30 or 40.
Yep.
They just see it as it's never going to happen unless we're a lot closer.
Right.
So it's funny how the checkbook comes out when you're a few steps away from the verdict.
Yeah, we even went to mediation in December of last year, and we were still far apart, and then we got it done a month later. So I think I tell my clients all the time, I was like, I personally, it depends on the case, but definitely in the big value cases, I think mediation, even mediation deep in litigation, I think I don't ever try to get the case resolved there. I think mediation is a good starting point to get see where their head's at.
Yeah, get a little info.
But definitely the big value cases, there's always more.
Yeah,
There's
settling
more.
a mediation is I think it can be better once you have a really good and big reputation for trying cases.
Right.
I think you can probably get fair value at mediation. But when you're, coming up and you're still making a name for yourself and you're still trying your first few cases,
right.
I think in order to get like good value, you probably have to show them your back.
You got to show them that you're willing to go all the way. You got to show them that you're willing to go and not care and just say the line on it. And they got to see that. The carrier has to see it. Defense counsel has to see it. And so don't get me wrong. I like going to mediation, but I rare that I settle at mediation. It's always funny when the mediator is always like, oh, I settle 75% of my case at mediation. I'm like, shit, it's probably 15% on my cases.
Yeah, but there's no data on that. So it's anytime that there's no way to prove anything, it's all bullshit.
It really is. It has to be. Because I'm like, dude, I've mediated with you 10 times. I've never settled a case with you. So who are you talking about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But so what was it like a group of people in the parking lot did she know her assailant?
No.
Okay.
She had no idea. She was there because there had been a fight broken out with one of her family members.
Okay.
Earlier. So she went down there to see what was going on because she was told. And then another fight broke out. And then that's when she got stabbed by this person.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what did you have a theory of liability early? Like, how did you work that one up?
I brought an expert in right away.
Okay.
I brought an expert in right away and started just making sure I had that done and set in like ready to go. And then, with those cases, I pull a public records request on crime grids, prior incidents. And then when we get that crime grids, I pull specific incidents and I actually request each of those reports to get the prior foreseeability. So we had that all just teed up, and then we sent a demand early on the case, and it was just radio silence. They didn't even respond to me. So then I just put it in suit, and we just started litigating it. Which, again, in my experience on those cases, it's expected.
Yeah,
that was just going to cave and pay you $1 million just by a letter, in my opinion. Unless you
there's
death
something
case,
egregious that happened, like obvious liability. But they almost never see these kind of cases as obvious liability.
Right.
So, switching gears a little bit, I'm on like a health and fitness journey. You're on one too, no? Like you lost a lot of weight, kind of.
Yeah, I kind of go on my 75 hard swings.
So you did 75 hard.
I did it. I done it back-to-back years. So I did it last year. I did it the year before.
To start the year?
No, I always do it in the ends up being always like in the middle of the year, like summertime.
And what you kind of like do it as like a
just like a reset.
Like a reset.
A reset. And I love it. I mean, I wish I would stick more with it.
Be more consistent.
Be more consistent with it.
Build it into the day to day.
Yeah, but I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I have a problem. Maybe mentally, I'm a 0 to 100 guy.
Yeah.
If I'm 100% into something, or I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's the same way with that's like the 75 hard thing. Is like when I'm like, all right, I'm doing it. I go all in, no questions asked, and then when I'm off of it, I'm like, whatever. I still work out every day, but it's the eating. I go to the gym every day at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
But it's just the eating.
So you're a morning workout guy, right?
Yeah, I'm up like 5 a.m. working.
When did you start doing that? Because as I feel like that's like one of there's a few things that makes you like a real grown up, and going from like afternoon workouts to morning workouts is one of them.
Yeah. So I started. It was when the first time I did 75 hard.
Okay.
That's because you had to get the 2 workouts in.
Oh, that's right. I don't know that. I've never done it, so I don't know. But I do remember that there's 2 workouts.
Yeah. So I'm like, how am I going to get? And at that time, I was working. Actually, I had my own shop at that time when I first did it.
Okay.
I was like, how am I going to get 2 workouts? And if I got to work all day and I got at night, what am I going to do? So I was like, I'll just get up early. And now I've been just, no matter what it is, I still stuck to that. So I'm good on that aspect. It's just
So when you were doing the 2 workouts a day, what was you did one before work and one after work? Or like before the work day? Because work, I assume you're like me. If you're awake, you're pretty much working.
Yeah, always, yeah. So I did I do like a HIIT gym workout.
Okay.
In the morning.
Nice.
And then I go in, when I did the 75 hard, I would run at night.
Oh, because one of the rules is that one workout has to be outdoors, right? So you would do like a traditional, like high intensity lifting routine in the morning, then do your work day, and then do an outdoor like sprint style.
I would run long distance.
Or just run miles.
Yeah, usually about like 4 miles at night.
And one thing that I was doing was neglecting cardio, and since I've added cardio like 6 months ago, it's really helped me be more like. I don't think it's the cardio so much that helps with the weight loss, but it is, but it's like the heart health. Mm-hmm. Something about like just like getting like offline and just like really like sweating a lot.
I love the run because I still run. Just the mental thing about it. There's something like really like mentally.
Once you get past like that 7-minute mark, right? And then you're just kind of in the zone.
I throw on like a good podcast or whatever, and I'm just like on a run, and I just have this like, and I think about a lot of things too, like a lot of my good ideas,
and like stuff,
marketing
stuff.
I think when I'm running.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, I'm like 5 miles, and I was just thinking about things, Well,
the science is clear that like when you do like heavy exercise, you get smarter. Like literally, they're saying now that when you're exercising, your like brain is like growing and like you're making neuro connections that if you weren't exercising wouldn't exist.
I believe it. Yeah.
So it makes a ton of sense that you like got your best ideas from runs or like, and then everyone knows the feeling right after you finish your run is just like you're like exhausted, but you just feel amazing.
And there's something about too, like when I was running and doing 75 hard, it's like you also get done with the run and like at night and I'm like, I don't want a cheeseburger after I just ran 5 miles. You know,
No,
like that doesn't
exactly.
sound refreshing at all. You know, it doesn't sound good at all. It's like
Yeah.
I want like a nice healthy thing. I just got done running 5 miles. Like I feel
It does.
good.
It makes you like. There's something about it that just like it like pushes you more toward like I just abused my body.
Right.
I need to like make it feel good, and
Right.
I need to put the stuff in that's gonna like.
So like for me, like when I do my HIIT workouts or like work out with weights, like after I like do that, I'm like I would be down for a cheeseburger. Or,
Oh
like,
really? It's
I'm
different.
down for like
the
a bacon.
cardio makes you like want to eat clean.
Right. It's weird. Like
Interesting.
Yeah, when I'm done with my morning work, I'm like, oh, bacon, egg, and cheese on a bagel with the hash brown sounds good right now, you know. But when I run, I'm like, oh, no way.
I just do lifting and then I go right into cardio just because I like to be able to just get all the sweating done and then just put up my suit on and then I'm like ready for the day. But if I was going to do 785 hard, I would probably do I don't know what I would do. I'd probably do cardio in the morning and then lift after. But so what the first time you did it, you just kind of like you're like, oh, I gained like weight. I was like, what was the impetus? But it was early on with my son. Okay.
I had this, my son, so we were busy with that. I was busy with work, and I don't know, I was just making excuses for like, I'm too busy to do. I'm like, I got the kid now, I'm working, I'm too busy to do anything, right? And I was just making excuses, and I just was like, all right, time for a change. Yeah, I just kind of got out of shape. I was eating bad. I didn't feel good. I felt exhausted. I felt tired.
But being a dad this has got to be like and this is kind of like a recurring theme for like some of my content and like, the people that I talk to. But when you are not a father and like, yeah, you can have a wife or whatever, but that's one thing, like from being bachelor to being at least in a relationship, but you still are like the master of your domain, right? Like you want to work out, you want to do nothing. Like then you become a dad and your life is like in a way like insignificant. Like the baby is like so important that it's almost like very few people would just be like have a kid and just stay in like amazing shape. Like it's almost like a mandatory thing. I feel like where you become a father and like there's even like, your wife gains weight, you gain weight. It's kind of like almost mandatory.
Yeah.
Like, and you went through that.
Yeah.
And I went through that like big time. There's like all this junk food in the house all the time. Sleep is like not coming easy. Yeah. And now there's like science that says when you're sleep deprived, like basically all your decisions, you gain weight, all your decisions become terrible for the most part. So basically you had to go through that, huh?
Yeah. And then I was like, you know what? I got to make a change. And then also I thought about it too, like now Jace is, my son is turning 3 soon. It's funny now he like sees me. He's like, on like a Saturday when I put my running stuff on, he's like, Dad, you going for a run? 3 years old. So I'm like, yeah. I'm also thinking about his future, like I didn't grow up with the dad that like worked out or ran and stuff like that. So I'm like, I hope that he sees like, listen, my dad still runs when I'm, and he's in high school. He's probably like, oh, I want to go work out. I want to go run. And he just kind of builds like that healthy lifestyle too,
Yeah. Both of my my little one is a little bit too young, but my older one's like, Daddy, you going to the gym? He knows that like every Saturday morning, well, I go every day, but Saturday mornings they're not at school. Right. So they see me like getting ready and going to the gym and they're asking me how long I'm going to go and like whatever. And he actually now he's about to turn 5. So he's like he asked Mommy supposedly the other day if he can come to the gym with me. So it's just like, it's perfect. Like, that's the one thing about being a parent is like, it really doesn't matter what you say. All that matters is what you do.
Oh yeah. They see everything,
which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really makes it like the ultimate accountability tool.
Right. It's funny. The other day I was actually last Tuesday, I was doing squats and I like first time ever, like kind of hurt my back.
Yeah.
And I like kind of bad where I like the next morning I could like barely move, like and you have a bad back, like you know how it feels. So that was like the first time I ever felt like that. So I got home and my fiance Daniela was like, oh, I like rub your back and massage you, whatever. So I was like, my back's hurting. The next day, Jace was playing with his monster trucks and he gets up and goes, oh, my back's hurting. And he lays on the couch and lifts his shirt up and says, rub me. And so
my boy does the exact same thing.
Right. Just
there's a spot on the couch that I always lay down on, like, because I'm like, my back's hurting. I need to like lay down for a few minutes. And my son will be like, oh, I need to lay down on the couch. My back's hurting me. And me and my wife are like, what are you talking about?
Right.
They're just obviously like imitating you.
Yeah. But really it just shows like, it then makes you realize that sometimes I feel like like for me, I don't realize how much he embraces everything I do.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and then it makes just me more conscious. Like, hey, he's really like looking up to you, and like everything
Yes.
you do, like really set an example. You know,
Even when he's not aware of it. First of
Right.
all, they're aware of like way more than anyone could ever imagine. But even the stuff that they're not aware of, it's affecting them subconsciously.
right?
So now you're kind of doing. This is your third year doing 75 hard.
I haven't started again this year.
Okay.
I'll do it again this year, but I haven't started.
This will be your third year.
Yeah.
And how much weight did you lose the first time you did it?
First time I was like close to 200.
Okay.
And I got down to 170.
Wow, that's a
75
lot.
days. Yeah.
And you're stronger too, right?
Right.
Like
And so the
leaner.
second time I did it, I was only about, I got to like 185. So I had gained a little bit back. But I was working out, so like definitely more muscle.
Yeah.
I just wasn't running as much.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm gonna make it a point to really eat more, because the last time I was really trying to lose weight, and I was like, the next time I'm gonna really try to like kind of
bulk up a little
but
bit.
also lose fat. So that time I didn't lose that much weight, but I like leaned out and got really much stronger. I like it, man. To me it's
How
the
much
best
do you
thing.
feel? I feel like when I'm still trying to cut. I weigh like 200 now, and I think that for me, I think like a good weight is probably like high 180s. So I don't have a lot to go, but I was like after my third back surgery, I was up to like almost 230. So I feel like, head and shoulders in a better position as a dad, as a lawyer, a business owner, everything. How much has that, like, how much does it affect you when you're like eating clean and like
It's great
exercising?
because I'm like really big on my numbers for my business too.
Yeah.
Like I know all my numbers.
Okay.
And it's actually kind of crazy to see and I don't know if this is a coincidence or not, but the months that I do 75 hard, my numbers,
Everything
through
gets
the roof.
better.
Everything gets better. Everything. And I'm like, it can't just be a coincidence, because it's been, both times were just, statistically
And you don't drink at all when you're on 75
no,
hard,
I don't drink
right?
at all. Completely, nothing.
Do you drink normally?
I used to drink a lot before. Not a lot. I don't want to say a lot. But I
Like a normal American.
Yeah, I used to
right?
party a
4
good
to
amount
5,
before
6 drinks a week,
yeah,
whatever.
before I had a kid, and I was young, and I don't really enjoy alcohol like that. though,
Yeah.
so I don't really drink. Like if I go now, I'll have like a social drink.
Yeah.
But I'm not the guy to like go home and like crack a beer or like drink wine.
I think that's an important piece of like once you start like really putting an emphasis on like your health, and especially when you do something like 75 hard, where you're like you're eating clean, 2 workouts, up early, lots of water, all that stuff. If you drink alcohol at all, I think part of 75 hard is no alcohol, right?
Right,
So
yeah.
you're not even doing alcohol at all. But then as soon as you're done, like if you have a drink, it's poison. Everyone knows that. So
Right.
as soon as you drink it, you're like, oh, this is like really hard to digest,
Yeah.
and like it gives you a headache, and that's why I think whether or not you actually do like a 75 hard or you just go through like a cleansing process, I think it's really, really healthy, because it kind of resets your body and makes you like think about it, a lot of people just never do that.
Right.
And then they just go on having 7 or 8 drinks a week and eating like a medium/bad diet. And until you go through like that like cleansing process, you're like, oh my God, alcohol is really strong and it's toxic, and it's like I
Right.
don't like it that much.
Well, it's funny that you said it, because like before, the first time I did 75 hard, and I realized my whole life I was living feeling a certain way, thinking it was normal.
Right.
And then when you get off of it and you feel a totally different way, mentally, physically, everything, you're like, wait, holy shit, this is
I was really doing myself a disservice.
I feel so much different,
Yeah.
That's what's crazy. And also I realized too, because I was always concerned, like, man, like how am I going to go do like social things without
Yeah.
drinking? It's awkward. Right? I'm
Yeah.
gonna be the weird guy out.
Yep.
And I'm not gonna lie, when I did 75 hard, I was actually doing more things because I was
You have
like,
so much energy, right?
so much energy, and also
Yeah.
I'd be like, you know what? I didn't think about the consequences of drinking. A lot of times I don't go do things because I'm like, man, if I drink, it's going to ruin my next day. And now I'm like, I'll go to that dinner and I'll go to this event and also go get home at 10 and do my run and still feel good next day, because nothing bogged me down just because I didn't drink.
Exactly.
You can do so much more, honestly, without drinking. It's kind of crazy.
It is. I think I'm like, as you get older, you get like allergies. I think I'm like kind of allergic to alcohol now. Maybe it's just that I'm just sensitive to it or whatever. But I had, I made a deal with myself that I'm not going to have a single drink this year. Okay. So, and I've been good so far. And I think it's helping me a lot with like making progress and like my fitness and health journeys. But I found the same thing. Like I'm perfectly happy going out and going to events, and I'm like, yeah, I can go to an event. I don't care. It's not like I have to say no because I don't want to drink and then I'm going to miss my morning workout. It's like, no, I go and I'm social and I don't drink. And then I wake up tomorrow just like every other fucking day and I crush my workout. And it just, man, it's like you said, like you don't realize how much you're setting yourself, how much you're slowing yourself down. Right. Until you take it away. So that's why I don't think necessarily like everyone should be alcohol free, but I do think that it's like really good to, the same way like I do some fasting, like it's good to just not eat any food at all for a while, just to like kind of like let the body reset. I think it's really good to just not drink at all for a while and just kind of, it reminds you like, fuck, this stuff's really strong. Right. And but you build up a tolerance to it and then you forget. Right. So that's really good that you've. So what's your fighting weight now? Like, what are you weighing in at day to day?
I'm like 185 back to.
And that's where you like to be.
Yeah, I mean it's all right. I could probably cut a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure honestly because I'm not there yet. But yeah, you look. I think you posted a picture of like a few months ago of like a transformation. It was pretty. Yeah. It was pretty noticeable. Yeah. It's probably went from like 25% to 15, maybe something like that.
I was even less than that when I did the first time. I think I was down to like less than 10.
Oh, wow. You were really shredded.
Yeah. So I got down. I mean, I've always had that where it's like I can gain really quick and I can cut really quick.
Were you an athlete growing up?
Yeah. I played baseball in college.
You played baseball?
Yeah.
Oh, where'd you play ball at?
FAU.
Nice. What position?
I started off playing second and then I moved to third.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So.
Well, we have some stuff to talk about off the air. I want to talk to you about a few cases, but where can people find you? Where are you, what social channels are you or the firm on? Yeah,
I mean, the website is workmaninjurylaw.com. Okay. My Instagram is _accident lawyer.
Okay.
So you can go follow me on Instagram, and that's it.
Nice. Most of your cases, are you guys doing a lot of advertising, or is it mostly just referrals?
Referrals. I mean, I'm running some local service ads.
Okay.
On Google.
Very nice.
So we get some leads off there.
Nice.
But yeah, mostly just kind of referrals, friends, family, current clients, former clients, other lawyers.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, we have a couple cases together and hopefully some more. So, all right, well, that's going to wrap it up. Wrapping up with Devon Workman of the Workman Injury Firm. You're in Broward, right?
Yep, Fort Lauderdale.
Very cool. So until the next one, peace. All right, man. That was good. That was good, man. That was cool.